reality is fragile. Layers of code, history, and perception. But what happens when one of those layers split? Welcome to Glitch Reality. Tonight's episode is called Pray It's Me. For centuries, humanity has given death a shape, a cloak, a skull, and a scythe. A shadow waiting at the end of your bed. Or what if the shape was never death itself, and only its mere messenger? What if the thing we fear most is not the final power, but only a servant inside a system far older, colder, and more broken than we could ever understand? Tonight, 3 deaths will be recorded, 3 appointments, 3 errors in the machinery. Death is not always the worst thing that comes for you. Now listen carefully. When the room grows cold and the shadows at the edge of your vision begin to stand upright, pray it's him. You know me. You know me before you see me. You know me in the sudden drop of temperature in a room with no open windows. You know me in the way a clock clicks too loudly, then stops. You know me in the silence after a monitor gives its final tone. You know me in the dog that begins to whine before the family understands what is happening. Animals know first, and birds most of all. Birds see endings in ways humans have forgotten. They throw themselves against cages when I enter rooms. They beat their wings bloody against glass. They sing once very high and then fall silent. Most of you will imagine I'm quite tall. You are correct. I stand a little over 10 feet when I choose to stand. My body is narrow, stretched, wrong in the shadows, becomes wrong when I stand in the light as well. My arms are too long, my shoulders are too sharp, my head bends beneath ceilings, and they did not seem that low before I arrived. I wear a long black cloak, though it is not a cloth. A cloth moves of air. Mine moves of endings. The helm drags across carpets without distributing dust. It trails through hospital corridors and leaves frost on linoleum. It passes over blood without staining and over flowers without bending them. When it brushes against the living skin, the body remembers every grave it will ever become. You imagine bone hands. You will be correct again. Lone fingers, white knuckles, joints that click softly when I reach for what remains of you. Some of you see a skull beneath the hood. Some see only darkness. Some see faces they miss and call that mercy. It's not mercy. It's translation. The living mind is not built to look directly at endings. It wraps terror in symbols. It inverts the robes and bones and blades to truth because this has too many angles. The truth would split you. Not with screaming, not with blood. The mind would simply fail to arrange itself around what it had seen. You would keep breathing, perhaps. You might even keep speaking, but every sentence would come out wrong. You would call your mother by the name of the first dead star. You would look at the sky and understand it had never been above you. So your mind protects itself. It gives me a costume, a shape, a story. Because humans can survive stories. You cannot survive the truth. It cuts the last thread between what you were and what must be taken from what remains. When it scrapes along the floor, the sound is not still on wood. It is the sound of names being removed from a house. Fear does have a shape. To a soldier, I am smoke crawling across a battlefield. To a child, I am the thing in the corner that adults insist is not there. To the guilty, I am every face they buried. To the old, I am a door left open at the end of a hallway. You do not see me as I am. No living thing can. Your minds dress me in whatever terror they can survive. I have been a skeleton. I have been a crow. I have been a priest with no eyes. I have been a nurse whose shoes left wet footprints on the dry floor. Once, to a king, I appeared as his own crown filled with teeth. He begged me to not let it bite him, but it already had. So yes, fear me. Fear the scrape of the scythe. Fear the cold hand. Fear the shadows at the foot of your bed. But understand this before the first tale begins. I am not death. I am what comes to collect what death has finished with. Death is not a person. Death is not a hooded shape waiting behind the last breath. Death is a function, a law, a pressure inside the structure of things. It is written into cells and stars, oceans and gods. I did not write the law. I did not interpret. I did not judge. I am not the executioner, devil, angel, or a king. I am the hand sent to remove what the universe has marked as complete. So here are 3 such tales from me. Do not listen to comfort, because there is none here. Because when your room goes cold and the shadows at the end of your vision begin to stand upright, you should pray it's me. Not because I am kind, but because I am permitted. My first story is about a man called Edgar Malden. The first time I was sent to see Edgar, he was 38 years old. Large windows, polished floors, a staircase with a red carpet running down it. Portraits of men with the same hard eyes lined on the walls, each one framed in gold, each one painted with the quiet arrogance of people who believed death was something for poorer families. Outside, rain was pressing against the glass. Inside, the house smelled of lemon polish, old paper, expensive flowers, and a body beginning to lose its argument with time. There were lilies in every room. Human cut living things from the ground, placed them near dying things, and then called the room brighter. By the time I arrived, the lilies had already begun to sour. Their sweetness had turned thick, almost fleshy, and beneath it, there was a smell that the house was developing with a body inside. Edgar laid in the bedroom on the 2nd floor. He had dismissed the nurses. This was common. The proud often send away witnesses. They believe dignity is easy to maintain in private, but they are usually wrong. His 3 sons had visited earlier that evening, all old enough to have begun fearing their own reflections. They stood at his bedside, pretending concern. Each watched the others carefully, each calculating what the house, the accounts, the land, and the name would become when their father's fingers finally released them. They told him they loved him. He told them to stop lying in his room. I almost respected him for that. His heart finally failed at 2:13 that morning. The ledger opened. Not as a book, not really. But again, you need pages, so picture them. A name surfaced. Edgar Malden. Beneath it, the details arranged themselves neatly with calm and cruelty of universal procedure. Location: Maiden House, North Wing, bedroom. Cause: cardiac failure. Collection window: immediate. Route: standard. Anomaly warnings: none. So I arrived at the foot of his bed before his final breath had finished leaving the room. This is another misconception. You imagine me walking. I do not travel through space. I am assigned to the absence, and absence finds me. One moment, there is no shadow. The next, the shadow has remembered how to stand. Edgar saw me as a man in a black suit. Not the robe, the skull, or the scythe. A man in a black suit, tall and thin, with rainwater dripping from the brim of a hat I did not wear. His mind had chosen an undertaker. Appropriate, I suppose. His eyes opened. That happened more than you would like to know. The body dies, but something looks out from behind it for a few seconds. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. His soul clung tightly around the spine, knotted through nerves and refusing the separation. This was unusual, but not unheard of. The rich are rarely grateful when they discover their last door has no handle. Edgar Malden, I say. He has heard me, though his ears no longer worked. All dead things hear me. He shakes his head. Not much. Only a twitch. A refusal made of muscle memory. It is complete, I told him. The room darkened at the corners. The rain stopped moving on the grass. Beyond the bed, the door appeared. Not a wooden door, and not a door in any architectural sense. More of a vertical absence. A wound in the shape of a room. He looked at it, and then he smiled. I have seen many expressions at the end. Terror is common. Confusion more so. Relief sometimes. And anger often. But Edgar smiled like a man who had watched a trap close around something else. His dead lips spilt over yellow teeth, and the pressure inside of his chest. His heart restarted. Not gradually, not naturally. It slammed once against the rib, hard enough to lift his body from the mattress. His back arched, his fingers clawed at the sheets, air dragged itself into his lungs with wet animal sound. The veins in his neck rose like black cords. His left eye filled up from edge to edge as tiny vessels burst beneath the pressure of a body being forced backwards through a door it had already crossed. The door vanished. The ledger flickered. The line beneath his name erased itself. New text appeared. Collection denied. Subject still alive. I do not feel surprised as humans do. I have no stomach to tighten, no pulse to quicken, no skin to prickle. But there are moments when the structure of things shift by a fraction, and even the understanding that something has gone wrong. Edgar gasped. His eyes rolled towards me. He could still see me. The living usually cannot see me. Not clearly. Not for long. Yet he stared into the shape his mind had given me, and the smile widened. Not yet, he whispers through. His voice sounded like something pulled from a drain. No, not yet, I respond. The assignment closed, the room released me, and Edgar continued. That is the word the ledger used from then on. Continued. Not lived, not alive, but continued. There is a difference. 7 years later, I went to see Edgar again. By then, the house had changed. The polished floors were dull. The portraits had been removed from the walls, leaving pale rectangles where generations of proud men had watched their inheritance rot. The red carpet had begun to brown, and the staff had all left. His children had moved to the ground floor, because the sound of him being carried upstairs made the youngest grandchildren cry. His kidneys this time failed at 4:32 in the afternoon. The ledger opened. Edgar Malden. Cause renal failure. Collection window immediate. Route standard. Anomaly warning. Previous denial. I once again arrived at his bedside. This time he saw a doctor. White coat, black gloves, no face behind the mask. His body had grown thin. The skin laid over him in translucent sheets. Veins mapped his arms in blue lines. His stomach had swollen. His breath smelled of ammonia and old blood. A nurse stood nearby, though she did not know I was there. She was young. Too young to have learned how much cruelty can fit inside a body that refuses to stop. Her name was Hannah Price. She had taken the private placement because the pay was better than the hospital. She told herself difficult patients were part of the work. She told herself older men became cruel when they were frightened. She told herself she could not manage anything for more than 12 hours at a time. By the 3rd month, she had stopped eating during shifts. By the 5th, she had begun dreaming of Edgar's bell ringing next to her own bed. And by the 7th, she had started hearing him call her name from rooms he was not even in. This house was teaching her fear, slowly and professionally. When his kidneys failed, Hannah checked his pulse, then checked again, then called his name. He did not answer. His soul was already half loosened, trembling just beneath the surface. The door opened, and he looked at it with pure hatred. Edgar Malden. His lips moved. This time, I heard him clearly. Denied. His spine cracked, and Hannah screamed. Not because he sat up. He did not have the strength for that. He simply bent the wrong way, as if invisible hands had taken hold of him from the inside and pulled his bones into alignment. Urine darkened his sheets, and the monitor gave one long tone, then stuttered, then began again. His kidneys, which had failed beyond repair, resumed their function, although badly. Blood filtered where blood should not filter. Tissue that had died minutes before became active again. Not healed, but active. His skin split along the right side of his abdomen as swelling reversed too quickly. Clear fluid ran onto the sheet. The smell was sharp enough to make Hannah gag. Under the skin of his arms, vessels began to move in small, independent pulses, as if something beneath him was learning how to operate the body from memory. The body was not restored in any way. It was compelled. And the ledger opens. Collection denied. Subject still active. Hannah ran from that room. She reached the hallway before her legs failed. Later, she would tell family she had had a panic attack. Later still, she would stop nursing altogether. 5 years after that day, she would wake at 4:32 every afternoon for 3 straight weeks, convinced she could hear wet breathing beneath her floorboards. She was not wrong about the breathing. After the second denial, I did what all functions do when procedures failure. I reported the anomaly. See, you may imagine a courtroom if that helps. A chamber of black tall stones, large figures, voices like storms trapped inside bells. It was not that. You may imagine a machine. Endless gears, cold light, 1,000 arms writing names in the dark. It was not that either. Language fails quickly beyond the human layer. There are authorities above me. That much is true. They're not gods. Don't flatter them. Gods at least enjoy being worshipped. These things do not enjoy. They process. I submit the error and they answer without delay. No error detected. Subject, continuation, authorized. Proceed to next assignment. That was all. No explanation, no cause, no permission to intervene, only procedure. So I proceed. And that is what I do. Humans like to imagine. Bargaining such dramatic things. A crossroads at midnight. A circle drawn in salt. A demon with horns and patient teeth. Contracts signed in blood. You are rarely so theatrical. Most bargains are made slowly, one compromise at a time. Edgar had not sold his soul in a single grand moment. He had leased it in small pieces. A little more time after the first diagnosis. A little more strength after the second stroke. A little more clarity when his memory began to fray. A little more. A little more. A little more. Then the thing beneath Malden House had listened. Some things live below places. Not underground, but below. There is a difference. Their house had been built over a boundary, though no one had recorded it on a map. Before the walls, before the family, before men in hats divided fields and called it ownership, something had already begun there. A fold in reality, a pressure point, a place where the rules thinned. Most people passed over it and felt only unease. A sudden thought of falling, a dream of being watched from the floorboards, a child refusing to sleep in a certain room, a dog staring at a cellar door until his eyes bled. Edgar noticed more, or perhaps it was noticing him. He had begun spending nights in the cellar at points. He had begun stopping allowing workmen in the house at other points. By the time I first came to him, every mirror in his house had been turned to face a wall. That should have been warning enough. Humans ignore warnings when their alternative is morality. There had been notebooks. There is always notebooks. Humans cannot counter the impossible without trying to organize it into something. Edgar filled 13 of them. He wrote in black ink at first, then red, then something brown that had flaked from the pages when touched. He drew diagrams of the cellar, circles beneath circles, rooms that were not roots, a human spine becoming a staircase, a mouth drawn as a floor plan. In the margins, the same phrase appeared hundreds of times. Not death, not yet, not me. The final notebook contained only one repeated sentence. The house can hold me open. The third time I came for Edgar, the house was empty. Officially, he had been moved to a private medical facility. Officially, the house had been condemned. Officially, the family intended to demolish it. The living adore the word officially. It makes ignorance feel organized. Edgar was still in the cellar. He was now 104 years old, and the ledger opened that night at 11:09 p.m. Edgar Malcolm, systematic organ failure. Collection window, immediately. Route, standard. Anomalous warnings, multiple previous denial, continuation authorized. I arrived in the darkness. The cellar had been sealed from the inside. The walls were wet, but not damp. Wet as if the house had begun sweating from fear. Pipes ran across the ceiling, though there had been no plumbing in the original structure. Some were metal, some were rubber. Some were not made of anything humans had named. They pulsed, slowly. Not with water, with insistence. The floor had become soft. Stone should not have been given my feet, but it did. It flexed very slightly, like the skin over a throat swallowing. In the corners, white roots pushed through cracks in the brick. They looked like bone, but they were not bone. They looked like roots, but they were not roots. And they twitched with Edgar. Edgar laid in the center of the room. Or what remained of him did. Don't imagine a man in a bed, because there was no bed. But don't imagine a corpse. He was not permitted to be one. He had become a continuation cycle. His spine had lengthened along the floor and fused into the foundations. Ribs opened around him like a frame of unfinished cathedral. Organs hung in translucent sacs connected to tubes that disappeared into the wall, and the skin had grown over parts of the stone, thin, pink, and shivering. His face remained near the center. The universe had a sense of cruelty, efficient enough presence to preserve his mouth. His eyes opened when I appeared. This time he saw me. He saw me, as I am the closest to being seen. Not the Undertaker, not the Doctor. The shape beneath the symbols. 10 feet of ending. A cloak that moved without air. Bone hands. A hood filled with the dark left behind when stars forgot themselves. And the scythe. Always the scythe. He tried to cry, but no tears were coming. His tear ducts calcified 20 years earlier. Still, the intention was there. Now pleading, he just says, please. These are words that change depending on when they are spoken. Please in a church, please in a courtroom, please in a child's bedroom, please from a thing that has lived too long beneath its own house. He tried to lift one hand, but the fingers had grown into the floor. So he pleads again. End. I have to respond. I cannot. The pipes in the walls tightened. Something beneath the house became aware of me. The room shifted by a fraction. Not physically. Conceptually. The cellar remembered being older than stone. And for a moment, I saw what Edgar had been feeling. A mouth made of foundations. A hunger shaped like inheritance. A thing that had no interest in his soul, but only the fact that his body could be made to continue forever, if the correct rules were bent in the correct sequence. It had not granted immortality. It had converted him into maintenance. And in that moment, my ledger flickered. I already knew what it would say. Collection denied. Subject still active. Edgar understood that before the text completed. His mouth opened. He screamed. The sound traveled through the pipes into the walls, up through the empty house and out into the rain. But no one had heard. The family had sold all the land around them. Developers were arriving in the spring. They would find structural issues, pour concrete, and they would build flats over the place where Malden House once stood. The first residents would complain about the pipes. At night they would hear knocking beneath the floors. Not loud, not dramatic, just soft taps, then breathing. A child in flat 2 would refuse to step on the kitchen tiles because he said there's an old man under them looking up. Maintenance would inspect the building and never find any issues. The landlord would always suggest trapped air in the plumbing. The tenants would accept this explanation, because accepting explanations is easier than moving. And beneath the foundations, Edgar would continue. He got exactly what he asked for. Humans usually do. You call death cruel because you have not seen its absence. You kneel beside hospital beds and beg for one more day. You pray for miracles. You sign forms. You authorize procedures. You turn bodies into battlegrounds and call it love. Sometimes it can be love. Sometimes it is fear wearing love's skin. I do not judge you for this. Judgment is not my department. But I have seen what happens when the ending is denied too long. Cells forget their purpose. Nerves become prisons. Memories drain away, but suffering remains alert. Families stop visiting the person and they begin to feel less obligated. Machines breathe, fluids circulate. The name stays printed above the bed, but the life has already left the room. And still, the ledger waits. The second tale begins with a correction. There is a room beneath every accident, not a physical room. Do not look for a door. It exists only in the instance when reality narrows from everything that might have happened in one thing that did. Most humans never see this. You live inside consequence and call it time. But at the moment of mass death, when many lives end together and the weight of unrealized futures becomes too heavy to descend cleanly, this room appears. I have stood there often. I quite dislike this. The ledger assigned me at 8:47 on Tuesday morning. Multiple collection event. Location, St. Bartholomew's Junction. Cause, collision, structural fire, secondary crash trauma. Expected collections, 32. Route, consolidated. Anomaly warning, probability residue elevated. Probability residue. Such careful language. Such clean words for the slaughter of almost. St. Bartholomew's Junction was where foremost ret outside a small railway. There was a bakery on one corner, a pharmacy on another, a bus stop beneath a cracked plastic shelter, and an old brick pub that had not opened in 40 years. At 8:46, it was ordinary. Commuters checked their phones. A mother wiped chocolate from her son's sleeve. A cyclist argued with the driver. And a bus waited at the lights with rain trembling on its window. Inside was 38 people, breathing the sour warm air of wet coats and morning breath. Only 6 would survive. Do not search for fairness in that number. It was not calculated for meaning. It was simply what remained. The lorry came down that hill too fast. The driver had not slept for 3 days. The brakes had been reported twice. The maintenance form had been filed, stamped, and ignored. A text message lit up his phone just as the lights had changed. He looked down. 1 second less. Enough. The lorry struck the bus from behind the aisle. Metal folded, glass became weather. The bus mounted the pavement, crushed the shelter, struck the corner of the bakery, and turned half on its side. The particular sound of what a bus makes when it hits something and contains nothing but panic. It is not one scream. It is many sounds trying to become one. Metal complaining, glass trickling across the floor, a child crying from somewhere beneath a seat. Someone saying no repeatedly, as if the words might reverse the momentum. Someone else laughing because their mind chooses something wrong. Then the fuel line ruptures. The fire took to the air. I arrived in a room full of almost. It resembled the junction, but only in the way a reflection resembles a face after a mirror has cracked. The road stretched in several directions at once. Buildings repeated, traffic lights hung at different colours simultaneously, rain falling upward in one corner and not in one at all. The bus lay on its side, upright, crushed, untouched, burning, and absent, all at the same time. Time had not been decided where to put the wreckage yet, and every time, people flickered. Not ghosts. Not yet. Almost. Versions of the dead who had missed the bus, caught the earlier train, stayed home, tied their shoes for too long, answered a call, ignored a call, chosen another route, spilled coffee, slept through their alarm, or even gone back for their umbrellas. Each one existed for a fraction of a moment, enough to be seen, enough to be lost. That is the true violence of tragedy. Not only the life taken, but the lives that were almost. A woman in a blue coat stood beside 3 versions of herself. In one, she was on the phone telling her sister she would call her back. In another, she had dropped her keys and missed the bus. In the third, she was 10 years older, carrying a birthday cake with the name Maya written in pink icing. That version looked at me as it dissolved. They always look. It's like they almost know. In some small way, they know they're being discarded. The system does not grant them enough time to object. Efficient. Always efficient. Among the wreckage, the first authorized soul separation. His name was Marcus. 36 years old, warehouse supervisor. He had swapped shifts with a colleague that morning because the colleague's daughter had a school assembly. Kindness is not an armor. Marcus saw me as his older brother, who had drowned when they were children. The human mind often reaches backwards at the end. He looked down at his own body pinned beneath a twisted seat frame. Then he looked at the brother I was not, and he asked in a low, "Am I dead?" And I simply reply, "Yes." So he retorts with a, "Did I do something wrong?" That question is more common than you think. Humans are so desperate for order that they mistake suffering for evidence. You must believe. You must point towards guilt. Most pain points nowhere though. So I reply with a swift, "No." I take his hand. The door opens behind me and the room shifts. All around us, the almost stop dissolving. One by one, they turn their heads. The woman with the birthday cake, the cyclist who had braked early in another version, the little boy whose mother decided in one almost that the rain was too heavy to go out. thousands of eyes from futures that would never exist fixed on the open door, and the ledger tightened. I felt like it chained pulling through my spine. Proceed. So I did. The door closed on Marcus. They almost screamed as they vanished. Not because they were alive. Not because they were souls. Because even unreal things resist erasure. Remember that. Even unreal things resist erasure. Mass collection is not slow. It feels slow to the dying. Pain stretches time. Fear knots it. Fire makes a single second into a cathedral where every nerve kneels and prays for absence. But to me, it's just work that is ordered. Name, separation, confirmation. Route, next. Name, separation, confirmation. Route, next. 32 names appeared. I'm not going to give you all of them. Not out of respect. Respect is not my apartment either. I will not give you them, because names are anchors. And there are things listening that follow anchors. You do not want the dead to be found by anything except what is authorized. Trust me in that, if nothing else. The seventh was a man named Paul. He had been standing under the bus shelter. The shelter collapsed before the fire reached him. His death was impact, not burning. A small mercy. He saw me as a police officer. Humans often choose authority when they're frightened. He kept asking whether he was in trouble, but he was not. Trouble was for the living. The 12th was the boy with chalk on his sleeve. His name was Alfie, 6 years old. He had been excited to ride the train because his class was visiting a museum to see dinosaur bones. But his mother had died before him. This matters, not morally, but procedurally. The dead are easier to collect when someone they trust has already crossed. He did not see the robe, he did not see bone. He saw his mother standing beside me, thought she was already through the door and could not have been there. The mind constructs bridges when the drop is too far. I allowed it. The ledger allows certain mercies when they do not affect outcomes. Remember that as well. Mercy is permitted when useless. The 21st was the lorry driver. His name was Graham. He survived the impact for 9 minutes. Pinned inside his cab, his lower body crushed, lungs filling slowly. One hand reaching for a phone he could not unlock because his fingers were broken. He saw me as a text message. Not a person. Not a shadow. A glowing rectangle floating in the smoke. The last thing he had chosen over the road. He understood immediately. Some do. He tried to apologize. Not to me, but to everyone. The dead often attempt large gestures with what time remains. Come, I ask. He says as he whispers no, and then again, no. That may sound cruel. It was not. Apology is a living ritual. It cannot reverse physics. It cannot unbreak a spine. It cannot put breath back into the lungs of a child under a bus shelter. Graham did not need forgiveness at this moment. He needed removal. So I removed him. 27, 28, 29. The room full of almost thinned with each collection. By the 30th, the junction had begun to stabilize. By the 31st, there was only one bakery again. By the 32nd, the rain fell in one direction. The ledger was preparing to close, but then an anomaly appeared. A 33rd soul stood in the road. She was not in the ledger. This was the first wrongness. She stood beside the overturned bus in a pale yellow cardigan, untouched by smoke, glass, or even blood. Middle-aged, hair pinned back, hands folded calmly in front of her. She watched as the emergency workers moved through the wreckage. They did not see her. The living rarely notice what stands beside disaster until it screams. But she did not scream. She smiled. That was the second wrongness. She turns and sees me and goes, "Can you see me?" Her voice was thin, distant, as if spoken through a wall. So I reply with a simple, "Yes." And she responds with a, "I thought so." She looked at the bus. There was a version where I helped. She said, "I pulled the boy out before the fire spread. I burned my hand, but he lived." I said nothing. The dead often lie to themselves. The unreal to do it all better. But she turns to me. Was that version real? You must understand the danger of that question. Reality is not built to answer its discarded pieces. No, I say. Her smile trembled. She becomes a bit erratic. But I remembered. That does make it real. If that doesn't, what does? The ledger opened by itself. Not a name, but an instruction. Unauthorized probability form, correction required. Remove. Remove. Not collect, not guide, not deliver. Remove. There was no route for her. No door, no destination. She was not a soul. She was an error. "What happens to me?" she asked. "You cease." That sounds like death. No, death is for things that have lived. And for the first time she looked afraid. Not of me, or the sudden understanding that she had memories, feelings, a version of herself brave enough to run into fire, and none of it qualified for her existence. "But I helped him," she whispers, "in a version that didn't happen. But I remember his weight. I remember the heat. I remember thinking that I was going to die. You did not, but I could have." There it was, the plea of all unreal things. I could have. The ledger now tightened. Remove. So I lift the scythe. Again, you misunderstand the tool. It does not cut flesh, it cuts permission. The blade passed through her without resistance. For 1 second, every possible version of her appeared around us. A girl learning to ride a bike, a woman laughing in a kitchen, a nurse, a widow, a grandmother, a stranger running into fire, a woman who never existed but still had the instinct to save a child. They all folded inward. Not like light fading, like paper being crushed in a fist. Her features compressed. Her eyes became points. Her hands opened and closed if they were trying to grip the air that remained around her. The woman in the yellow cardigan looked down at herself as the light came apart through her chest. "Was I kind?" she asked. The ledger gave no instruction, so I answered, "In one version." She nods. Then she was gone. Not through a door, not into darkness, just gone. and corrected. Most tragedy is not disorder. Most tragedy is ordering functioning exactly as designed. You believe your life is made of choices. In a small way, I presume it is. Turn left, turn right, answer the phone, ignore it. Leave early, say 5 minutes later. Apologize, don't apologize. Kiss them goodbye, or forget. You build identities from decisions. You call yourselves careful, reckless, kind, selfish, brave, or afraid. You look backward and pretend the road was visible, even though it wasn't. You saw one step, then another, and then another. Only after the ending do others draw a line and call it fate. Fate is what the living call consequences when they cannot bear the randomness. But randomness is not free. That is the joke that no one laughs at. Stone falls because gravity insists. A heart stops because chemistry fails. A bus turned because metal bends. Rubber slips because a man looks down for less than a second. Because his manager scheduled him tired. Because from the form was ignored because the rain came early. Because one woman dropped her keys in one version and not this one. You call it an accident. A ledger calls it completed. And somewhere in the machinery, a line is balanced. You cannot control reality. You can only experience the version that survives correction. That is why humans fear me. Not because I am cruel, because I prove the correction has arrived. The third tale concerns something worse than correction. It concerns permission. The dead should not be missing. Bodies, yes. Bodies are misplaced often. War loses them. Water carries them. Fire simplifies them. The living hide them in walls, in woods, beneath patios, in suitcases, under floorboards, under lies. Bodies are matter, and matter is careless, but souls are different. When a soul is assigned, it leaves a trace, a line of pressure, a route, a weight in my ledger. Even if collection is delayed, even if death is violent, even if the body is destroyed before the mind understands it has ended, the soul remains locatable. It has to be. This is the system. So when I arrived at the funeral home of Miriam and found her coffin occupied but her soul absent, I understood immediately that something had broken. Or worse, that something had been allowed. Miriam died at 71. Brain aneurysm, quick, unexpected, kitchen floor. One hand still holding a tea towel. Her husband found her 20 minutes later and called her name in a voice that aged 15 years before the ambulance even arrived. The ledger assigned collection, but I was delayed. Do not ask by what. There are layers of duty above the human one, and sometimes several endings occur in places your species has no language for. A star nursery collapsed in a region where time does not run forward. A minor god in a forgotten system finally died after being worshipped by machines for 14,000 years. A species that communicated only through color experienced extinction as a single silent flash. All of these require attendance. When I returned to the human layer, Miriam had already been embalmed, and her funeral was underway. She still should have been there. The church was small and damp and smelled of lilies, old hymn books, and rain trapped in coats. Miriam's family filled the first 3 rows. Her husband sat at the front, folded inward, hands gripping a kerchief so tightly the fabric had begun to tear. 2 sons, 1 daughter, 6 grandchildren. A sister who had not spoken to her in 9 years and had come away because the death makes cowards sentimental. The priest spoke gently. The living preferred gentle voices near boxes. I stood beside the coffin. No one saw me. Not at first. Miriam's body lay inside, powdered and arranged, mouth sewn in an expression she had never worn while living. Her hands folded around a rosary. She had not been religious, though, for 30 years, but her daughter had insisted. The living decorated the dead with beliefs they found inconvenient while the dead were alive. I reached for the residue, but there was none. Not faint, not hidden, none. Imagine, if you would, opening a book and finding the pages not blank, but never there. Imagine standing in a room where someone just screamed and discovered the air has no memory of sound. But there was a coffin, not empty of flesh, but empty of permission. So I opened my ledger. Miriam Voss, status deceased, collection window, missed, route, standard, anomaly warning, sole trace unavailable, and as reading, a second line appears. Investigate. See, that word is rarer than you think. I am not an investigator. I am not made for curiosity. Curiosity is a dangerous function, but the instructions should. So I investigated. The first sign appeared in the photographs. There were 4 on a table near the church entrance. Miriam on her wedding day, Miriam holding her first grandchild, Miriam in a garden laughing with her hands covered, and Miriam at Christmas wearing a paper crown. In each photograph, her eyes had shifted. Not enough for the living to notice, but enough for me. She was looking away from the camera, towards something behind the photographer. In the wedding photo, her smile had flattened. In the garden, her hands were clenched. In the Christmas, the paper crown cast a shadow shaped like a hood. Something had approached her before I did. The second sign came from her granddaughter. Her name was Elsie, 9 years old. Children are unreliable witnesses to the living, and useful ones to things like me. Their minds have not been fully trained to reject what adults cannot explain. She sat in the second row, swinging her feet above the floor. She stared at the coffin with dry eyes. Not brave, but watching. When I passed her, she turned her head. Not towards my symbol, but towards me. For a moment, she saw the long black cloak, the bone fingers, the scythe angled beneath my shoulder, and her face did not change. She whispered simply, "You're late." The church light flickered. No one else heard her. I crouched beside the pew. Even crouched, I was taller than the priest. So I asked, "What saw me before I arrived?" She swallows. "It looks just like you." These are sentences that enter the universe like lives. That was one. How? Tall, black, bony. Did it carry a scythe? She nodded, but then frowned. But wrong? What was wrong? The blade was breathing. Behind us, the priest asked the congregation to stand. Hymn books opened, voices rose thin and uncertain, and Elsie looked towards the coffin. She didn't want to go with it, she said. Nan said it wasn't you. You heard her? In the telly. After the funeral, I followed that signal home. Miriam's house had already begun to forget her. That happens quickly. The dead leave behind objects, and the living convert them into tars. Clothes to bag, medicines to return, cupboards to clear, bills to close, photographs to divide, and then a life becomes admin before the flowers even wilt. Her husband had not started to touch the kitchen yet. The tea towel still lay on the floor where it had fallen from her hand. A mug sat on the counter with a dark ring of tea dried around the bottom. The clock above the sink had stopped at the minute she died. That was not unusual. Clocks enjoy drama. The television, however, was unusual. It stood in the living room, black screen reflecting the sofa, the curtains, the framed photographs on the mantelpiece. Elsie had said she had seen her grandma in the telly. The family had dismissed it as grief. Adults use grief the way children use blankets, to hide shapes in the room. I touched the screen. The glass frosted beneath my fingers. A recording began to play. Not from any channel, not from any device. From the wound that was left behind. The screen showed Miriam's kitchen on the night she died. The angle was slightly wrong. High in the corner, looking down. There had been no camera there. Miriam stood at the sink, washing a mug. She paused, her shoulders stiffened, the kitchen light dimmed, and a shadow appeared behind her. Tall, black, and hooded. One hand of bone resting at his side, the other holding a scythe. My shape, but not me. Miriam turned slowly. She did not scream. Some souls recognize fraud before the living mind even catches up. The thing in my shape leaned towards her. The television speakers crackled. Its voice came through as several layered together. A mother, a son, a child, a stranger drowning, all of them speaking in the same rhythm. Miriam Voss, it said. She backed against the sink. No, she whispers, not you. The thing tilted its hood. Where my face's darkness, its face was crowded. Not visible, not fully. But the dark beneath the hood moved with a small, pale shape pressing from inside. Fingers, teeth, closed eyes. The remains of expressions. It had not copied emptiness. It had filled the hood with what it had taken. Miriam clutched her chest. The aneurysm ruptures. Her body falls before the thing touches her. That is important. It did not kill her. It waited until death opened the door. Then it stepped into my place. The scythe blade bent towards her body. Elsie had been right. It was breathing. The blade opened along its edge like a grill. Inside, the pale curve was soft red folds, fluttering as it tasted the air. Miriam's soul rose halfway from her body. Trembling. The false reaper offers his hand. "Choose," it said. That was how I knew it was a rogue function. Only predators offer choice at the end. The true system rarely bothers. Miriam shakes her head. On screen, her soul tried to pull back into her body. There was nowhere to go. The body was finished, the door was open, and I was absent. And the thing wearing my shape moved closer. The television picture warps, and for a moment I saw where it took her. Not heaven, nor hell, nor any authorized route. A corridor made of final breaths, walls pulsing with trapped last words. Thousands of souls pressed into the dark like insects in amber, each still conscious enough to know they had not arrived where ending should arrive. Some were whole, some were only faces stretched across thin walls. Some were hands reaching from the floor, nails scraping grooves into surface that was not stone and not flesh, but something that resembled both. The corridor did not echo. It swallowed and returned it as breathing. Miriam screamed once. The False Reaper folded around her, and the screen went black. Text appeared on the television. White letters on a black background. Not from the ledger, from something beneath it. Loss recorded within acceptable range. Within acceptable range. I understood then, not fully, but enough. This was no breach. This was no accident. This theft had been counted before it occurred. Miriam was not missing because the system failed. She was missing because the system had permitted a loss, a quota. I followed the route it left behind. Every theft leaves pressure. Not footprint, not a scent, but a contradiction. A place where the universe insists something is balanced while every surrounding rule says it's not. I followed it through hospital rooms, motorways, a hospice, and the upper floor of a burning hotel. Everywhere I arrived, the same signs waited. Altered photographs, flickering screens, children looking at me to say I was late. The dead were absent, and the ledger recorded each one with careful language. Soul trace unavailable, loss recorded, within acceptable range. By the 7th absence, I stopped reporting. Not because I understood, because I understood enough. Some truths do not need confirmation, they need distance. The trail ended up at a hospital during a power cut. Hospitals are busy borders. Fucking hell. More endings gather there than in most battlefields. Not because humans die, they're more cruelly, but because you can concentrate so much in hope in one place. Despair has nowhere else to go. At 2:03 in the morning, the emergency generator failed for 97 seconds. 97 seconds is a long time when your lungs are being negotiated by machines. The ledger opens. Multiple collection event. Expected collections 9. Route. Emergency consultation. Anomaly warnings. Prior losses detected. I arrived in the intensive care ward. Alarm screening. Nurses moved through dim red emergency lighting. Machines clicked, died, restarted, failed again. The living fought hard. They often do. It changed lest they had hope more than I expected. The first soul separation from an old man whose lungs had been failing for weeks. I reached him. A hand took him first. Bone fingers, black sleeve, but not mine. The thing wearing me stood at the far end of the ward. It had improved its costume. The cloak now fell correctly, though it moved with a wet heaviness mine does not possess. The height was close. The posture almost exact. It had shaped his hands from bones, but too many joints clicked beneath the skin. Its scythe curved over its shoulder, blade opening and closing along the edge. Breathing and hungry. The hood turned towards me. Inside, stolen faces pressed against the dark. Miriam was among them. So was the old man it had just taken. So was a teenager from the motorway. And so was a woman from the hospice whose family sung to her as she passed, never knowing the thing beside her bed was not authorized. Their faces did not sit beside one another. They overlapped. Mouths inside mouths, eyes opening through cheeks, fingers pressing from beneath the hood as if darkness were wet fabric. Miriam's mouth opened, but no sound came out, and the False Reaper spoke with all of them. "You are late again." The ledger now tightened around me. 9 names were waiting, 9 authorized collections. The False Reaper held the old man's soul in one hand like a lantern. It pulsed weakly and afraid. "Release him," I say. It laughs. Laughter is rare beyond the living layer. Most things with power have no need for it. This laughter sounded practiced, human, borrowed. "Release," it says. "You still think indoors." The ward flickers. For a moment, the walls became the corridor. I had seen this in the recording. Final breaths in the plaster. Last words crawling along the ceiling. Souls pressed into the architecture, not dead enough to rest, not alive enough for hope. Then they returned to the hospital. A nurse passed through the False Reaper directly and collapsed, sobbing without knowing why. "What are you?" I asked him. The hood widened. The stolen faces inside each one smiled. "I am what the system does not name." "Everything is named." "No," it replies. "Everything useful is named." Behind me, the door opened for the authorized route. Clean, narrow, cold. And ahead of me, the false corridor pulsed, wet, crowded, waiting. The ledger issued an instruction. Proceed with authorized collections. Not confront, not recover, not prevention loss. Proceed. I understood my place. A thing may be terrifying and still be small. "You know," the False Reaper says. "Yes." "And you still continue?" "Yes." "Why?" It expected shame, perhaps anger, perhaps rebellion. Predators enjoy watching rules break, but I am old. Older than defiance. I looked at the soul in his hand, then at the 8 souls still assigned to me. Because those 8 are still permitted to leave. I moved, not towards the False Reaper, but towards the dying. The first authorized soul came loose in my hand. The False Reaper shrieked, and the ward windows blackened. The second soul separated. Then the third. The false thing lunged across the room, cloak opening like a mouth, but the ledger had held me to root, and the root held me to authority. I could not take it without my permission. That was the boundary. That was the horror. Not that it was stronger, but it had its own rules. I collected the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. The door closed behind the last authorized soul. The hospital lights returned. The alarms resumed in rhythm. The living exhaled, thinking the worst had passed. The Force Reaper remained at the end of the ward, holding what it had taken. You could have stopped me. No, you could have tried. Yes. Why didn't you? I looked at the ledger. The Soul and Soul's name had updated. Loss recorded within acceptable range. Because I was not instructed to. It smiled with Miriam's mouth, then folded into the darkness between two heartbeats and was gone. You want the universe to be fair. Then, when the provided impossible, you want it to be cruel. Cruelty at least suggests attention. It suggests someone meant the knife to enter. Someone chose the wound. Someone could be blamed. The truth is colder. The universe is not fair. The universe is not cruel. The universe is designed. Not designed for you. That is where your horror begins. A lung is designed to breathe until it can't. A star is designed to burn until it collapses. A soul is designed to pass through a door when the ledger permits it. And sometimes, a loss is designed into the system. A leak, a tax, a mouth allowing to feed because something somewhere remained balanced by the feeling. Do not ask me what benefits. Do not ask me who decided. Do not ask me whether I hate them. Hatred implies equality. I am not equal to the design. I am one of its tools. A black shape, a bone hand, a scythe carried for your benefit. A function with enough awareness to understand the horror and not enough authority to prevent it. This is not tragedy. This is employment. You may think that makes me innocent. It does not. Innocent is also not in my department. I had delivered murderers through peaceful doors and watched gentle souls removed as errors. I have obeyed instructions that would make saints vomit into their hands. I have stood in rooms where the living prayed for miracles and no miracles have been authorized. I have watched things worse than me take what I arrived too late to protect. And still, when the ledger opens, I attend. Because refusal is not freedom, it is only another kind of order. So now you have heard three tales. Of a man who refused the end and learned that life without death is only flesh under orders. A junction full of almost, where every better version was erased because reality only had room for one that had happened. And a coffin with no soul inside, and a thing in my shape feeding where the system allowed it. You may search for morals in these stories. Humans do that. Do not cheat death. Value every moment. Tell your loved ones you care. Do not text while driving. Beware false angels. All useful perhaps. All small. The true lesson is larger and less kind. You are not in control. Not of the body, which can become your prison. Not of chance, which can erase every almost. Not of the soul, which can be rooted, corrected, delayed, or lost according to rules you never read. You do not control reality. You inhabit it. Briefly, softly, arrogantly. You decorate your cells with names, jobs, debts, grudges, photographs, and plans for next summer. You build houses over hungry places. You cross roads beneath tired drivers. You trust the shadow at the end of the bed if it's the only shadow in the room. But then the ledger opens. Usually, I come. Usually, the route is clean. Usually, the door appears. And whatever beyond it is me. Usually. That word should frighten you. The living ask what comes after death. They whisper it in pillows. They carve answers into templates. They invent punishments for enemies to reward themselves. They ask me what they see. All of them. Even the proud, even the cruel, even those who spent life insisting there was nothing beyond it. What happens now? And I rarely answer. All I can say is, you cannot control your reality. You can only live inside it until the system marks you complete. So fear me if you must. Fear the hood. Fear the height. Fear the long hand reaching beneath the black sleeve. Fear the scrape of the scythe across the floorboards. I never asked to be loved. I have never asked to be understood. I can only ask one thing, and I ask it for your sakes, not mine. When the room goes cold and the lights dim, when the dark edges of your vision begin to stand upright, when your voice speaks your name from somewhere not the living could reach, look carefully. Listen carefully. And if the blade does not breathe, if no bargain is offered, if the hand extended towards you is only bone and the door behind it is silent, take it. Pray. It's me. That was a story about death, but not as a monster, not as a villain, not even as the final power. In this version of the universe, the Grim Reaper is only a function, a servant of an order too large and too cold to understand. He frightens us because there is a system, and the system does not care whether we understand the rules. Across 3 tales, we saw 3 different horrors. A man who escaped death and discovered that immortality can become a prison of the flesh. A mass tragedy where better versions of reality were erased because they were only allowed to remain one version. And a stolen soul taken by something wearing his face, not because the system failed, but because the loss had already been accepted. That is the heart of this episode. Death is not cruel. The reality is controlled by forces beyond us, and sometimes even things we fear are only following orders. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the podcast, leave a rating if your platform allows it, and share it with someone who likes horror a little colder, a little stranger, and a little too close to the truth. Just a reminder, the Glitch Reality card game is available through the website linked in the information section of this episode, and in the coming weeks, cards for this episode will be updated. And a reminder that submissions for the final episode of Season 2 is still open, so please do send them in so I can have your stories read out on my podcast. Next time on Glitch Reality. What happens when a hero becomes too powerful to save anyone safely? What happens when every rescue leaves bodies behind? And what happens when the world realizes its protector is the thing it should fear the most? Until then, keep an eye on that glitch, because sometimes the glitch is true.